We'd like to thank the following sponsors for helping provide this video.
I'd like to introduce Gil Broza, who is going to talk about being agile, having a mindset that delivers.
Yeah.
Let me switch over the
Right.
slides.
Anyway, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again. I was here a year and a half ago giving a talk about the human side of Agile management, and now we're looking at one more thing that has to do with Agile, which is how we think. So the show of hands indicated that a lot of people here are currently involved in some form of Agile. We're going to start this talk by you guys talking. I'm going to ask you to buddy up with a neighbor or two. I hope those are people we don't already work with. And this is not the start of a joke. Imagine a typical person in your company going to a typical stand-up, and if they're leaving it, and let's say they're leaving it with a buddy, what are they really saying about the experience? All right, so just share with each other. Just take 30 seconds. All right, go. All right, folks. Quick show of hands. So who here, you told your neighbor or neighbors something along the lines of, today's meeting was interesting, valuable, I learned something I didn't know, productive, something like that. Show of hands? What, 5 people? Okay. All right, so who? 2 hands. Okay. And who here said something the equivalent of, today's meeting was a waste of time, I could have been productive during this time? Yeah, a whole lot more. Now, mental exercise. What if we replaced stand-up with sprint demo? Who here would say, yeah, our typical participant says the demo was an hour well used. We got something done here. We got good feedback. We know how to adjust now. Show of hands? OK, good. Today's demo was a waste of time. It's an hour I could have used to actually do something useful. Different effect. OK. So the stand-up and the sprint demo are supposed to be 2 of the fundamentals that you use or do when you want to have Agile. And you know, my history in Agile started in 2001. And over these years, well, the first few were as an employee and a manager, but then also as consultant, coach, trainer, and whatnot. And I have come across many, many people who try to implement Agile based on some sort of recipe, book, training, whatever it is. Basically, they had a list to work from. And I also met a lot of people who just rolled their own Agile. I've come across many people who got great results, and I've come across many people who got mediocre or worse results. And I did not find a correlation. Instead, what I found were several problems, and here are 3. The first one, people say, look, we think we're doing everything right, but the results are not there. We're not quite sure why. So you want to use Agile, you think you're doing everything right, the results are not quite there, but so what's left? What do you do? So the implementations tend to end up stalled this way. But it's not about the implementation, right? It's about the performance. So the performance, in this case, is usually not all that great. So we switched from something that we knew how to make work to something new and promising, and it's not entirely working, but we don't know why. OK, another pain. People start implementing this, and then they realize, oh my God, this runs deeper than we thought. We thought that just buying a tool and adopting practices and calling somebody Scrum Master and calling somebody Product Owner would be successful, but guess what? It actually runs deeper. Until people actually realize this, there's lots of unintended casualties. People who get pushed out because they no longer fit. You have unintended casualties and people getting pushed into positions that they're ill-qualified for. There's definitely erosion in staff trust. And also, people do a lot of shoddy work at that point because, for instance, at the technical level of software development, nobody really teaches them how to do things different. Right? The iterations are deliberately short so that you cannot squeeze your big design up front into them, and people don't know how to succeed, which gives us the 3rd point. The 3rd point is that nobody actually even seems to agree. This is Agile, this is not. This is Scrum, this is not. There's rampant confusion. And a lot of evidence shows that just adhering to form, basically process compliance, or function, doesn't always help. And what worries me in all of this is that people don't know how to succeed anymore. I don't know, is anybody here, seeing yourself in this picture? Yeah, so you're in the right place, because the main thing we're going to look at today is that thing called the Agile practices. They don't matter. You can tweet this if you want. They don't matter. What matters is how you approach them. And we're going to look at how this works. So what we're going to cover in this hour or so is what that approach actually is. It's documented now. It's solid. We know how it works. So that we can explore what it is. We can make choices there that are more than the choice of, should it be Scrum or Kanban? Should it be Jira or Rally? Should it be on the wall or in a tool? So I want to help you learn how to effectively choose your methods, so that if Agile is in fact the right fit, and sometimes it is not everything should yield to Agile, then you can support mindful change. So I hope this will be useful for you. And we'll get started. We are going to talk about a whole lot of theory. Mindset, by definition, is abstract. It's all here. It's invisible. It is intangible. And my mindset is not your mindset. I hope we agree if we're on the same team. But unless we articulate it, which we normally don't, then we can get into trouble. So we're going to talk about a whole lot of abstractions and theories here, but I want to ground them for you, and we're going to start with you just thinking about your latest big work. Call it project, initiative, undertaking, whatever. So I'm just going to ask you to think about that, something you've been involved in recently or even now, and it spans several months. I'm going to show you 3 statements, and I'm going to ask you to think, you don't have to say it, which of these 3 statements fit your situation best. The first statement is this: working closely with our customers, we deliver valuable products frequently. So if this describes your situation, you haven't seen the other 2 yet, but if this is it, you probably have Agile. Maybe this statement works better for you. We've adopted Agile practices and roles and tools and artifacts, but the way we work just doesn't feel particularly Agile to me. This is what I call mechanical Agile, going through the Agile motions. And the third option is we produce big deliverables based on early commitments of time, budget, and scope, which probably goes by the name waterfall. So of these 3, you would have probably chosen, again, Agile motions or waterfall, and we're just going to see a quick show of hands using sign language. Who here picked A? All right, about 12 people. Who here picked waterfall? Come on, you can admit this. It's not a sin. Okay? About the same number. And who picked this? All right. All right. So definitely more than before, but not everybody. I guess you have other letters. Okay. So let's see about this whole mindset business. First off, where does it fit? All the stuff we tend to talk about when we talk about Agile is at the bottom of this diagram. Again, practices, methods, practices, artifacts, daily Scrum, product backlog, stickies, as a something, I want something, all of these things. These are the visible mechanics of work that yield results. We can learn how to do them from others, from books, from trainers, doesn't matter. But this is how we execute and work. We execute and work because we need to achieve some objectives. That's the top of the diagram. So whatever work we do, whether it's a project at work or shoveling our driveway, I live in a country that does that, that is work. It has certain objectives. Quite often what happens, though, is that people look at their work, they understand why they're doing it, again, objectives, and then they say this: we are Agile, or we're Scrum, therefore we're going to do this and that. So here's work. I'm going to approach it with Scrum. Let's say I need 1 PO, 1 Scrum Master, 7 plus minus 2 people, blah, blah, blah. Before that came along, we had a single standardized response to this question: how do we get work done? The standardized answer was, we need 1 project manager. We're going to document requirements. We're going to get sign off. We are going to get work with gates and phases. We are going to document all the artifacts. We need people with technical skills, and if they happen to work with each other, well, that's nice. So we had a standardized answer to how do we get work done. All of this lives at the bottom of the diagram. So this was the standard answer. Now we have Agile, there's also Lean, but all of these ones live at the bottom of that. But look at this, there are 3 elements in there. One is principles, that's what we're going to start with, and then we're going to go to beliefs and values. Again, these are the 3 that make up that intangible and invisible and subjective experience that we call mindset. By the way, that's the word I use, but otherwise you can think of it as approach, same thing. Let's look at principles. The principle is how you make choices, how you make decisions, and how you act. So I want to share with you examples from the 3 popular approaches. So in Agile, one principle we have, which is definitely not an Agile invention, is collaboration. You got work to do, try to get more than one person on it. You benefit from diversity of opinion, and people catch each other making mistakes, and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So collaboration is not a practice. It's a principle that drives certain practices, such as pair programming. This is sort of the poster child of collaboration. Anytime you sit together and you jointly do work that you both feel owners for, that makes you collaborative. Another principle in Agile is get to done, what we might also think of as shippable or releasable, meaning whatever we start, we want to quickly finish. Okay? Again, this is not a practice, it's a principle. Whatever the work happens to be, we started, we want to finish it, as opposed to, for instance, starting a bunch of other things at the same time. This is not a talk about Lean, but I suppose many of you are familiar with at least the following 2 that I'm going to show you. Probably the most famous principle in Lean thinking, the thinking that Toyota gave the world, is eliminate waste. Think about all the activities that go from idea to deliverable, identify the ones that are wasteful, and eliminate them. What I described now is a practice. It's value stream mapping and whatnot. But then behind that, there's the thinking that in the work we do is right, and it should be done. But some of the activities that are involved in that are not helping us, and we can get better by eliminating waste. A lot of Agile teams have adopted this principle too, but technically it's not in Agile. In Agile, our big deal is feedback, not eliminating waste. Here's another one from Lean that Agile stole, and that is deferring decisions to the last responsible moment. And what that one says is that whenever you need to make decisions, which is probably every day, evaluate the need to make them now. And consider when is a better time to make them when you're better informed, and the risk and the costs are not too bad. So this is better known in some circles as just in time. Okay? But it is, again, a principle. In waterfall, one principle is sign-off. Agile doesn't have it. The thinking with the sign-off principle is that you're not done until somebody more authorized than you has said so. This gives rise to all sorts of practices and roles and whatever, such as approval meetings and RACI matrices and blah, blah, blah. So on your handout, the first page shows, again, that mindset diagram. And it will show you, again, how these principles guide our choices. If we choose sign-off, we will work a certain way. And if we choose collaboration, we will work a certain way. Various different practices and setups will support collaboration, and various won't. There's no necessary one answer there. One more principle in waterfall: maximize utilization. Keep your team maximally busy. Okay? Again, in Agile, we don't have that. Some people practice Agile as if they have it. And that's one way of them getting in trouble. And we'll see that one later. So on the next page on your handout, you will see a shorthand version of the set of Agile principles. And I'm going to give you a whirlwind tour of them. There are 26 of them. Yes, the Agile Manifesto had 12. But in the 15 years that have gone since, we've learned a thing or two. So what you see on this page and the next is all congruent with the manifesto, but it identifies better what we now know to be Agile and what is not. So let's look at them. 3 fundamental principles to everything we do in Agile: feedback and learning, which together get us into improvement. This means that we're constantly obsessed with understanding where we're at, asking ourselves and our customer and whoever for feedback, and seeking out learning also that we can improve. We improve everything: our product, our process, our teamwork. This is fundamental to Agile. If you do nothing else but just these 3, you're doing well. There are 2 sets of principles now, one about work and one about people. We'll start with the one about work. So the way Agile works, and I'm going to try to say this without using any of the typical terms you might be familiar with. So we work in small time boxes. This is that. We work in small time boxes. How do we choose what gets into the time box? All the decisions we deferred to, well, now. Everything we wanted to do simplified the most. And if we're not sure about certain things, any experiments we need to run right now. What comes out of the time box should be shippable. That's the getting to done. In other words, it should be almost good to go or simply gone. We're constantly asking about its value. That's the outcome question. It's not about the deliverable in Agile. It's about the difference it makes. We constantly look at, are we being effective? Are we solving the right problem, addressing the right need? And only then we worry about efficient. And we pay attention to team results. That's the counterpart to maximizing utilization. Along the way, there are 3 things we want more of and 1 thing we want less of. The 3 things we want more of are a higher frequency of deliverables as possible and as necessary. That's the cadence at which we make a difference. We want to maximize quality along the way. And we want to work reliably. That's doing clean work. If you know technical debt, that's not it. And we want to drive down the cost of change. Because we assume change is going to happen, we want to respond to it economically and gracefully. So we want to drive down the cost of change. The counterpart in waterfall is to drive down the cost of work, which we do by maximizing utilization, by the way. So this is how we think about work in Agile. This is how we think about people. In the Agile Manifesto, the first line speaks about individuals and interactions. This is actually how the diagram is organized. So the people are the individuals, and the stuff on the sides is interactions. So for people to even participate willingly, we need respect, we need trust, we need personal safety from consequences of acting in the greater good. We need transparency. We also want people to focus on what they're doing. And we want them to work at a sustainable pace. All these 6 principles mean that we treat our people as, in fact, our greatest asset. In terms of how we want them to interact, we want them to communicate, keep each other informed. We want them to collaborate, own results together, and do work together. We want them to self-organize so that they choose who does what when. And we want them, as much as possible, to operate with consensus, meaning that decisions are not only owned by the team, but everybody has a voice and they actually follow up. And to facilitate all of this, we rely on servant leadership. So what you've seen so far, again, it's a whirlwind tour of the 26 principles. You can explain Agile this way without resorting to, again, Jira and Stickies and Scrum Master. This is important because not everything yields to that. Not everything should. Now, let's look at the next level up in that diagram. We don't just artificially come up with, or arbitrarily come up with principles. We choose our principles based on what we believe and what we value. We're going to start with what we believe, which is what we consider to be true. It's stronger than an assumption. It's like a conviction. Let me give you a few examples. Agile. Requirements get stale. You can collect requirements. They may actually be required, but the longer you wait with them, they're going to get stale. Here's another one. Collaborative and self-organizing teams are great for mitigating human error. Notice These are not practices. These are not facts. These are not principles. They are assumptions. We cannot prove them. Some people try to. Good luck. But we cannot prove them. We can only say, there's been enough evidence, or it just feels so right, we're going to operate as if it's true. By the way, that belief that collaborative self-organizing teams mitigate human error, that's a relatively new thing. Because in the decades after the Industrial Revolution, the belief was if people make mistakes, the only recourse is to manage them. That's how we got supervisors. Here's another belief. Change will happen. And responding to it can be a competitive advantage. Wonderful. The customer knows what he wants. Do you work in places where people believe that, even though they might not actually say it? Here's the next one. Customer knows what he wants, and we can extract it reliably from their head. That gave us the practice of requirements elicitation. Combined with the principle of sign-off, we now work with certainty. Here's another one. People are interchangeable as long as they have the technical skills. That's where maximizing utilization came from. That's how North America got away with the offensive thing of calling people resources. Because that means that we only really need their technical skills. Now, you can have other assumptions, other beliefs that have nothing to do with either approach. For instance, we need great people for great performance. That will drive our hiring practice, our team structures, our everything, right? Here's another one. People really care only for themselves. This belief, which we owe to the late Frederick Taylor and to a few other people, gave us lots of incentive schemes that persist to this day. And assume that as long as you satisfy people's caring for themselves, you should be good. Here's a parenting belief. You only need to say something once. Yeah, right. So when we work, we need to clarify and make explicit our beliefs. And I'm going to do an exercise with you. So going back to the project you identified, so A, W, M, consider the people who are in charge. Maybe that's you. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to think. You can consult with your neighbor, it doesn't matter. But write down one thing that those people in charge believed, assumed, took to be true. It could be about the work, about the people, about the customer of the work. About work. All right, take 2 minutes. Okay, I'm going to ask you to share, actually. We don't need mic running for this because I'll be typing as you contribute. So let's start with people with the W. So somebody who had a W and wrote down a belief. Would you share it, please? Just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Go ahead.
The highest value is robustness.
Okay. Go ahead.
We work better as a team.
That's in waterfall. You had the W?
Yeah,
Okay.
because they know that.
Okay. Fair enough.
We know what the customer wants.
If we miss the schedule, it's because we didn't do enough upfront planning.
Okay. Who's next? Tom.
We don't care how you do it, as long as we get what we want when we want it.
Hey.
We need to throw two more people on that.
Yeah, but that is situational. But maybe the belief is enough people can get the job done? Okay.
More resources.
Okay. Okay, a couple more.
You won't get what you want when you want it unless there are lots of controls in place.
Okay, one more.
We're working fine, we don't need any change.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to ask now the folks who chose the Agile statement.
We need to give more features to the client or customer.
Okay? Dave.
Change happens.
Yeah. Changes in the,
I am the product owner by managers or whatever.
I am the product owner?
Yes. Different people,
So that's what the person in charge believed?
yes.
Okay. Right.
The team can take on the task and complete it.
Yes?
Change is acceptable.
Is failure acceptable? Okay, a couple more. Okay.
If we put it on the roadmap, it'll be delivered for that release.
And that's in the Agile one.
Yeah,
Okay?
there's still people who believe that.
So is that right, what I wrote?
Yeah.
Okay. So, our belief set is a narrative. I'm going to ask you to read the 4th page, which is the Agile beliefs. And then we will look at this, and then we will talk to the people who had an M. As you were reading this, did anything stand out, pop out, or caught your attention, surprised you? Good. Good. Done. Yes? Right. So the statement was, this is not how IT has been done for the longest time, right? Well, now let's get... And Agile's been around for 20 years. I mean, to be fair, the world's only been paying attention for 10. Yeah. So now I want to ask the people who had the M, that we seem to have all the Agile ingredients, but that doesn't quite feel Agile to me. So look at the belief you wrote down. Does it feel like it aligns with that Agile narrative, or does it align more with what's in the waterfall column? If it aligns more with the Agile one, raise your hand. 4 people. It aligns more with the waterfall one. Lots more. What we're starting to see here is what happens when people just take on that, again, the bottom of the diagram, the visible mechanics of work, but they still work from the same set of assumptions. So now let's look at something that may hurt even more. Values. Our values are the things we care about, the things that are important to us, the things we take a stand for. We do that because we think this is how we will succeed. Here are the 4 Agile values. And they're written on page 5, but I'm just going to explain them to you, so you don't need to read them. Deliver value frequently, right? Your work delivers value. Not just once at the end, deliver value frequently. Be able to change quickly. This one says be able to change priorities, but it's like be able to change anything that you want to change. Be adaptive. Collaborate with your customer. To an Agile practitioner, the customer does not necessarily know what he wants. and all the stuff you read there. And so it's important to collaborate with the customer. It's no longer valid to just take orders from the customer and deliver when we're done, which is how IT has been done for years. And here's the fourth one: put people first. This is what they meant in the Agile Manifesto by saying individuals and interactions over processes and tools. What they meant is, we want a culture that respects and trusts and all of that stuff, that treats people well, because we assume that when we do that, only good stuff can happen. That's why it's so important to us. Let's look at the 4 waterfall values. Get it right the first time. When you practice waterfall, it's important to succeed basically on the first go. Now, you might have several of those milestones, but they're too far apart. So the idea is that each one of those you want to get right. Basically, you only get one shot to do something. On time and on budget. To a lot of people, that is absolutely important. It is a value. Why is it important? I don't know. I don't want to presume even, because it is situational. We see it happen all the time, and presumably that allows us to use our money well and I don't know, use other opportunities. Here's the third one: make early commitments. Anybody here ever asked to put together a plan that looks 6, 9, 12 months out? Or worse? Yeah, that's a practice with an artifact. And it comes from people for whom early commitments are important. That's why they do that. And they care about that more than they care about adaptation. They might tell you, sure, responding to change, yeah, I guess that sounds good. But they care about commitments more. The fourth Agile value is actually not situational. That again goes to culture. And it says, it's important to have a standardized process. This is how we will succeed. If you've had PMI training or any established project management training, this is fundamental. Again, I'm not saying if it's right or wrong, but it just is. It is important. Why is that important? Well, maybe because we're not sure who we'll have on the team. And we might need to replace them. We need a process that will promise us success. So for certain things in life, that is absolutely correct. If I put a shuttle into space, I want the waterfall one. And we know, because we don't need to be adaptive too much, and our customer is ourselves, and there's no point in delivering pieces of a space mission. And we want to put people first, but we got to have process. And sometimes we need to execute on it real well because we know what happens when we don't. Now, you can care about other things as well that have nothing to do with Agile or Waterfall. For instance, you can want to innovate. Agile, out of the box, is not designed for innovation. It's not against it either. It just doesn't matter. But you might say, no, for our work, innovation is critical. It is important to us. If you want to use an Agile approach as well, then you bake it in. Maybe you have more experiments and fewer burn downs. Okay. Here's another one. Avoid disaster. We have the Olympics coming up. We recently had the Pan American Games in my city, Toronto. The organizers probably do waterfall. That's fine. They need to get the athletes housed and fed and moved around, and they need for everything to be done right. And they also don't want terrorists to come in, because that's a prime target. So for them, avoiding disaster is a big deal. If you think back to the diagram, that gives rise to all sorts of principles, such as security, or double check everything, or authorization levels. I have banks for clients. They really care about this one. Keep your auditors and regulators happy, or at least not upset. I have other clients where data security or quality, or both, is critical. So again, this is not specific to either Agile or Waterfall, but in your situation, you might still care about these, and they will guide how you do work. Agile, as designed by those thought leaders 15 years ago, is the stuff on the left. That's a given. So on to our next exercise. Again, think about the same people as before, the people in charge of that big work. What was important to them? The questions in the bullet points or prompts? What was important to them? What did they take a stand for? Okay. I'm going to put this one back up as an inventory of ideas. It's not the only possible things you could care about, just to sort of jog your thinking. Okay? So take a couple of minutes, think back about those people. What did they care about, take a stand for? What was important to them? And then we're going to collect those. So let's see what you've come up with so far. I'm going to ask the people with an A to go first. Okay, so we're going to do this verbally. Okay, so folks here who had the A, the Agile, what's one value that you identified? Go ahead.
Fix it. Make it work.
Make it work. Okay. Another one?
Scale.
Okay, so, well, in more than one word?
Go from hundreds of products on the site to hundreds of thousands of products.
Okay. But is that a value of the deliverable or the value of how they get work done?
It's valuable to work.
Okay. What do we care when we want our deliverable to go from hundreds to whatever? What are we after?
Profits?
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, it could be profits. Okay. One more.
Don't be afraid to change and experiment and fail. So, I don't know how to describe it, but failure is acceptable as long as there's a safety net of some sort.
Okay, that is a belief. What is important to us if we believe that?
Growth.
Growth. We want to grow, and we believe that failure is one avenue for growth. Okay? Okay? One more. Yes? Learn from our experiences. Okay, so that again goes to like growth, right? Okay. All right. Those of you who had waterfall, what are the values you came up with?
Let's just make sure we follow the standard process.
Follow the standard process. So that's the fourth one from the list. Yeah.
Meet the metrics.
Meet the metrics. Okay. Get the numbers right.
Yes.
Okay. Are you both Agile and Waterfall?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. He keeps answering all of them. Okay.
Sometimes both in the same problem.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to that. So,
What I'm experiencing now, one particular project that I'm looking at, it's not working. We have to
okay. So, important thing is make it work by getting the right people. Okay.
Don't go over the budget.
Don't go over the budget. Okay. Yay. All right. Well, there's no point typing at this point.
Don't make a mistake.
Don't make a mistake. Failure is unacceptable. Okay. One more? Nobody. Okay. So now, people with an M. Okay? We've adopted the practices and the roles, but it doesn't quite feel agile to me. Yes, please.
Stop adding to the scope when I've committed to a time.
Stop adding to the scope because we're committed to time. Okay?
Same direction, make commitments. It's like a figuration, make commitments.
Make commitments, which we know from the waterfall list, right? I'm going to put that one back up again. Okay, one more.
We believe that putting agile artifacts and standardized templates is being agile, or proves that we're being agile.
Okay, so follow the templates.
Yes.
Well, the agile ones, it happens to be. But okay. So when we follow the standard, because we want to follow standardized process, right?
What's considered important to be successful is to prove that you're being agile.
Okay. So show that you have followed the process. That is important. Okay. All right, one more.
Simplify.
Simplify. That's a principle. What are we after when we apply the simplify principle?
For the simplest solutions, value simplicity. That's what we were valuing.
Why is simplicity important to us? What does it get us?
Fewer bugs?
Fewer bugs. So maybe we value quality, fit for purpose.
No, we value simplicity.
Okay. See, that's why it actually matters if you call it a value or a principle, because principles are really up for choice, but values is something we
In the absence of anything else, go for the simpler solutions. Simplicity is a value. You say it's a principle, but it's something we value. So how do you distinguish between them?
I distinguish between them because I'm not hearing an explanation of why it matters. You just say it is like that, but why does it matter? I might say I value delivering frequently because then my client or customer can recognize ROI earlier.
Makes sense.
Okay, or I can beat the competitors. So all those values, we have them because this is how we think we will succeed. So anytime you say something like this, I'm going to ask the same question, which is, how will that make us succeed? One more. Okay, so if you don't want to share, if you consider your values and the stuff that you wrote down, people with an M, does it seem to align more on the Agile side? Show of hands. One person, maybe two. Does it align more on the waterfall side? Definitely more people. Let me show you a bit more how this plays out. Like I said, our values and beliefs guide our choices. First, they guide our choice of principle. From that, we derive methods and all the visible stuff and the tools we choose and how we talk to each other and all of that. So these are just two simple examples. If, in fact, we value adaptation and we believe that the way to get adaptation is short feedback loops, that's why we would choose time boxes, like sprints and iterations. So if anybody asks you, for instance, why do we work in those 2-week sprints? Like, really? Isn't that overhead? Well, it might be overhead, but this is what it satisfies. It satisfies the important thing, which is adaptation. You have an example from Waterfall. If we care about getting it right the first time and we think we can put together a useful plan for that, clearly we would want the principle of plan the work and work the plan, which we would implement through a host of project management activities and all sorts of meetings. And here is where it gets totally off the rails. All the practices and techniques that you are familiar with, that you identify as Agile practices, they were designed from the Agile values and principles. But what if you use them out of context? And really, what you do have is that waterfall mindset. Let's see how that works out. Let's take the daily stand-up. The daily stand-up was designed as a regular check-in, whose intent is to maximize the team's value output. Put the daily stand-up as documented in the hands of people who value getting it right the first time and those commitments and believe that the plans work for them. Then you get a daily status meeting, which is a fairly boring meeting at that, right? And when everybody talks to the Scrum Master or PM or whoever, and everybody else spaces out, because they think of it as a status meeting, and it is a status meeting. Product backlog. The product backlog in a healthy Agile environment is this prioritized list of stuff, valuable stuff, deliverables that we might get to. Not must, not will, not should, might. Put it in the hands of people who operate with waterfall thinking, and the product backlog becomes another name for project plan. Only product backlog sounds better because the cool kids are doing that. Pair programming. Pair programming is an instance of collaboration, not just because it gets you more code. That is so not the case. It's collaboration to minimize the risk of employing human beings. When developers work alone, they make mistakes. If we're people first, we want to handle this in a people first approach, which is just work together, guys. Pair programming to people with a waterfall mindset is a colossal waste of time. Why should I pay 2 people for the work of 1? It's underutilization. Because I care about my own time and own budget and my commitments, and this is getting in the way. Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is supposed to be a servant leader. The goal of the Scrum Master is to help the team succeed as a team. But if what you value, again, is following the process and the templates and everything, then the Scrum Master is your process compliance guy. Sprint demo. The sprint demo is meant for feedback. Why do we need feedback, which is a principle? Because we care about adaptation. Sprint demo, for people with a waterfall mindset, is an opportunity for acceptance, which is their code for sign-off, and an opportunity to check that everybody was maximally busy. I noticed some people here smiling uneasily. Yeah, because that is what you get when the whole world jumps on Agile, this new darling, and all they see is the pretty picture. The pretty picture with the cycles and the blocks. And they don't realize that it omits all this stuff. All this stuff was there. When people thought Scrum up, they had all of this, all the green stuff. That's what they meant. And many trainers will tell you, but then all of this falls by the wayside because people are not aware of it anymore. And you have all the organizational machinery that still values the old things. So when we talk about change, this is the change we want. Now, if you ever start a new piece of work, my suggestion to you is don't say, hey, I'm Agile, I'm going to do this. Or, hey, I'm trained in, I'm a PMP. Here's what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter. What matters is to think in that sequence. Look at your objectives. Look at your needs. Consider what needs to be important here so we will succeed. What are we assuming here? Based on that, say, well, how do we want to make our decisions? How do we want to move? How do we want to operate? There are no stickies and sprints at this point. Doesn't matter that you have a tool. Doesn't matter that you're trained. Once you have all of this, then you design how you're going to do the work. This is mindful process design. It takes a few hours. That's all it is. And in every case I've seen, that has given rise to much better results than just saying, hey, everything should fit into Agile, right? Everybody says so. So I want to show you how to think about this a bit more. The model I'm going to share with you is known as the logical levels of change. It made an appearance in my previous talk here, actually, in another context. This is how people approach life. And this model basically tells us that there are certain things in us that drive others. My identity drives the roles I pick for myself. My roles drive what's important to me. Once I adopted the role of parent, certain things became important to me that were not before. I also make certain assumptions about what happens. For instance, you know how when some people become parents, they espouse all sorts of beliefs about danger that they did not have before. That's legitimate. We're human beings. That's how we work. This model tells us that any level will drive what's beneath it. Based on what we hold important and what we believe, we will learn to do certain things, and we will actually behave a certain way, and we will structure our environment a certain way. What you saw before, this is where it maps. So the Agile thing, the Agile approach, lives in that middle. But for many, many people, it doesn't. It only lives at the bottom 3 layers. It's in the environment, which is like the open space, and the behaviors of 3 questions standing up 15 minutes every day, and the capabilities such as, how do I prioritize a backlog? So if you bring Agile to your people, and all you do is pay attention to those 3 levels, we know from this model that one of two things will happen. The optimistic scenario is that people will realize that this is a better way to do business, better way to work, and they will align and shift and adjust their beliefs and values accordingly. Let me give you an example. I started my development career way back when in another country where everybody worked in offices. And I believed that working in an office was the best thing for me. And I actually read some research that justified that belief. So that's confirmation bias and whatnot. But never mind that. And once I moved to Canada, I started working in companies that only had cubicles. And I realized that actually being around other people was a good thing. And it was helpful and it was more interesting. I mean, I hated the partitions and everything looked terrible, but still, I was closer to my teammates and that actually made a difference. Before I believed I needed my quiet and my door and my headphones to concentrate, and now I realize that maybe that's not the only way. This is the optimistic scenario. When change at the bottom 3 levels helps the levels above it adjust. What happens more often though, and this has been the case with Agile enablement, adoption, transformation all over the world, is that change at the bottom levels bumps up against established values and beliefs, and because they're in the driver's seat, the first time trouble happens, they kick in. So you can tell me, hey, you should write stories and put them in the backlog, and here's an awesome tool, and that's so easy and great, and we can do this, until people ask me, where's your plan? We need a project plan. And I say, well, I don't have one. We're Agile. And I don't know how to answer this. And then turns out that the plan is because there's a deadline. And I cannot map what that tool says to a deadline. So I fall back on what I know to do. Individuals do that, and teams do that. So in order to affect change, you got to go to higher levels. For Agile to take hold, here are 3 conditions. The first one, first it needs to even apply. Not everything should. In those situations where what's important aligns with what is important in Agile, and the assumptions align with those that you read on page 4, then it's a good fit. And everybody needs to agree that it's a fit. Most, I'm going to say most, failed Agile implementations, you got either the managers buying into Agile or the teams buying into Agile, but not both. So when you have this misalignment, people work from a different set of assumptions and priorities and goals. Yes, everybody's trying to deliver the same deliverables, but different ways that don't agree. And here's the third thing. If the phrase buy into the Agile practices ever goes through your mind, I suggest erasing it and replacing it with buy into the mindset. Because getting buy-in to having sprints and demos is meaningless. It's the buy-in to work in short time boxes in which you actually adapt something and you finish something and you check with your customer to see that you're still on the right track. And the track might have changed. So you want buy into the thinking, not to the implementation. So I want to give you just this 5-point strategy for how to adopt and sustain this. You've got to start with maximum clarity and alignment. So this is everything I've said so far. You need to talk about these things because most people don't. If you're a leader in your organization, set the expectation of acting this way. Not the expectation of your daily should be 15 minutes or less, and your stories should be in this old template. No. The expectation of acting with these principles. Are you simplifying everywhere you can? Are you collaborating? Are you holding on decisions that you should not be making now? Is the team actually self-organizing? Are you constantly trying to stay effective and not just worry about efficiency? Agile is not for efficiency. So you want to set that expectation. Every time people talk about mechanics, tie them back to the mindset. For instance, somebody comes to you and says, you know what, we should do code reviews. We got Scrum. Scrum doesn't say anything about code reviews, but back in my old company, we did code reviews. Let's do them now. So you want to see what's behind that. Is it code reviews because you want to maximize quality and you want to do this throughout? Or is it code review because really you don't trust your team? That's the thinking again. How you implement Agile? You look at that list and you ask, what are we doing for this? What are we doing for that? And what are we doing for the other thing? You don't have a backlog of principles. That does not work because they work together. And if you do nothing else, feedback, learning, and improvement, start with that. The fifth point is about all the forces that are going to work against you. Agile is big on feedback because of adaptation. But if that feedback is not coming, maybe your customer does not want to give you any feedback, and people on the team don't give each other any feedback of any sort, then you got to rethink the suitability here or do something about it. That was just one example. So, if you ask me what's my opinion of stuff like Scrum or Safe or Less or whatever those names are, I'm okay with them only if you choose them because you agree with their underlying reasoning. Not because the picture looks pretty or you can get certified. So if the values and principles align and that's what you need, go ahead, take them. Now, along the way, this will be the experience. This is how people respond to change. Your only way to get through this is leadership, with patience and support and trust and enablement and feedback, not management. You cannot manage Agile into existence. It's only leadership. This was actually the subject of the previous talk here, now that I think about it. And if you do need your metrics, how agile are you? Again, you have the list of the 26 principles. For each, just ask, how well are we doing here? It's not, are we 4 weeks or less? It's not, is it 1 hour of planning per week of iteration? That does not matter. What matters is that we plan effectively. We actually do collaborate, and that translates into useful results. And our deliverables are meaningful, and we can adapt when we need to. That's the only thing that counts. And I think that's it. So this is for you if you're interested. I think I showed this even last time, and a bunch of you were interested. There's already been more than, I think, 1,500 people who like this. And I believe there's going to be a raffle of 2 books. Where's Tom? Yes, so I wrote this last year, and I'm still shocked and slightly frustrated that nobody did this before me. Actually documenting what the Agile thinking is like without saying Scrum. The word appears maybe 5 times in the book. Because, as you'll see, so this, and 2 are going to be raffled. You can apply this where it matters, including to such diverse activities as renovating your home, I've done that, and even clearing your driveway. Doesn't matter. Yes, and after the raffle, I'll be around. If you're interested in buying this, there's also copies of the old one. This month, all the proceeds go to charity, the Children's Foundation of Guelph, that helps kids who are not as privileged as us. And yeah, so it's been fun, guys. Thank you. Questions? Yes, but we need microphones for the questions. That one has 2. All right, David.
Okay. So you've listed 26 Agile principles.
Yes.
And I read through them, and all of them are consistent and congruent with all the other thinking, reading I've done about Agile. But the original Agile principles came from 17 thought leaders spending, a weekend in the mountains, came down with the tablets They had 12
It
principles.
was on the mountain, yes.
But they were something that was agreed upon by a group of thought leaders and has been reinforced, and et cetera. While these things sound good and consistent, and I can easily sign up for them, where do they come from? I mean, is it your thought, or
Yes.
is it published somewhere, or why are these the principles as opposed to those the principles?
Yes. Well, first off, if you actually look at the Agile Manifesto, what they call core principles are not core principles, some are beliefs. There are several that I think a lot of Agile practitioners would agree with, but they're just not there. For instance, it doesn't say anything about servant leadership. It doesn't say anything about deferring decisions. And there's, I think, 7 more that are simply not stated there. So I'm not aligned with any big authority. I tried to capture what I believe is the consensus of the Agile community that I've been part of for the last decade and a half. I've spoken with so many people, and the same patterns repeat themselves. So a lot of us can tell what is Agile and what is not, and that's what I tried to capture. In every item on the list, I was thinking, well, if I omitted this, would the result be not so good? And that's how I came up with the list. Yes?
Does the Agile mindset have to be at the executive or enterprise level, or can Agile still be successful if the mindset is just at the small, at the team level?
Okay, so I want to say something about that. So if you look at these values, both in Agile and in Waterfall, 3 are situational. I believe that pretty much every organization will have situations where you got to get things right the first time. You got to make early commitments. You got to be on time and on budget. We don't have free money. And there will be other situations where you want to deliver frequently, you want to be adaptive, and you want to be collaborative with your customer. The 4th one in each, this speaks to culture. A culture, the Agile culture, is definitely one that puts people first. It's not the only thing an Agile culture will be, but it's central. In an Agile culture, in a people-first culture, I should say, you can run waterfall projects. In fact, I would say many of you, you bring many of those people principles to work no matter what, right? You like consensus where it matters, and you like transparency and communication and all of this stuff. And that has to do with your personality. You're just that kind of people. The waterfall method does not expect these, does not assume them. But if you work in a culture where the process is king, you cannot run Agile projects there. Because what you will have is process-first Agile. And if you succeed, you're probably lucky. Some environments have to be process-first. Okay? I would hope that my doctors follow process. I would hope that my airline pilots do, and so on. And the police as well, right? Putting people first sometimes clashes with that. All right, another question. No microphone, he's here, I'll repeat it.
Agile advocates small incremental deliverables and small changes.
Yes.
What does Agile do in the situation where you've taken the small changes as far as you can on what you have, and you realize that what's needed next is something completely different with a different approach?
Okay, so the question is, you go small change at a time, and then you realize you need a whole revolution. No matter what we use, we're never clairvoyant. So even in waterfall projects, where we take the time to think ahead about what will change and what won't, we still get stuff wrong. Right? So our version 1 might be great, and our version 2 might be additions, and version 3, things start breaking at the seams. Version 4, we rewrite pieces, and version 5, we rewrite everything. Now, in Agile, the same thing can happen. But you might already start the work thinking there could be big changes coming. For instance, I wear one of these things. They were not around 3 years ago, 2 years ago. So you might say, well, we're building mobile stuff. People are talking about this wearable stuff. Maybe we should think about that. Maybe that disrupts everything. So small incremental change might not be the best idea for us.
What have you found to be the most effective methods for changing someone's mindset, say a holdout or a manager who's not on board?
So this goes back to what I put up here, which is this. Especially the first point. Again, most people don't talk about that. Seriously, a lot of people say, well, we couldn't fit the work into the sprint, let's extend the sprint. Happens to you, right? 2 weeks is not enough, let's do 3. 3 are not enough, let's do 4. That tells me that nobody has ever pointed out to them why we make them short. And the answer cannot be, no, the best practice is 2 weeks. We make them short, we deliberately undercommit, like in terms of the big picture, so that we defer decisions, so that we leave our options open, so that if something more important comes up, we can deal with it. This is the logic. What I just did, I went up through the diagram, through the principles to the values. That's it. Most people never hear that. So awareness is the first thing. The other thing is awareness of one's actions and how they help or hinder. For instance, many companies, we want teams to self-organize, but the choice of who's on your team is not yours. So you have people nowadays, started about 2 years ago, who are experimenting with self-selecting teams. I've done that several times. That stuff is dynamite. And most managers freak out because it takes away control that they think they should have. But the real underlying belief is, I know better because and the value is, I gotta get this right because if they make a mistake, it's on me. So there's the fear there. So everything here applies at the personal level as well.
What do you do in a situation where you know that your company from a high level really is truly trying to abide by the Agile mindset, but at a mid-management level and the people you're working directly with are still presenting waterfall methodologies even after having participated in Agile training?
Well, people don't change overnight, right? They don't change overnight, and they need time to think this through. They also need safe practice. And if they're still beholden to tight deadlines and plans we made before time, what are they going to do? So yes, you need the clarity, you need the feedback, you need everything else, but you also need people time to try this on for size. I cannot switch overnight to saying, you know, it's really important to me to deliver value frequently. That didn't even occur to me before. And now you're saying it should. Well, I guess. But it takes time to actually get there. So you need that patience. And sometimes, rarely, you can actually rely on their bosses to tell them, but positional authority doesn't get you far. So you rely on influence. And that's people who took the other training. Okay.
Okay, we should wrap up.
Oh, okay. Last one?
Oh, go ahead, take the last one then.
There's one in the back.
So when my organization rolled out Agile, we spent maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes on the principles and values for Agile, and we spent a couple of days on learning the process. So what do you recommend organizations do to get the values and beliefs and principles right?
Change the balance? When I do my 2-day training, more than 50% is why we think the way we think. I give people a starter process, kind of looks like Scrum. The rest is up to them to apply through coaching or not, through leadership, to try on for size. But if people don't spend enough time, mulling over this totally different worldview, we're back where we started. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Gil.